The black sedan had been following him for 3 days straight. Ryan Mitchell noticed it at the construction site outside Chloe's school, even at the grocery store at midnight. Behind the wheel sat a woman in designer clothes, gripping a photograph like it held the answer to life itself. She'd been hunting him for 12 years, not for revenge, not for money, but because her brother was dying, and Ryan's blood was the only thing that could save him. What she didn't know yet was that asking him to be a hero again might cost him everything he had left. If you're watching this story unfold, drop a comment with your city below. I want to see just how far this tale of sacrifice and redemption travels across the world. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. The rain came down in sheets that Tuesday morning, turning the Seattle construction site into a maze of mud and metal. Ryan Mitchell pulled his truck into the gravel lot at 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes early like always. The sky hung low and gray, pressing down on the city like a wet blanket. And the wind carried the smell of coffee from the food cart 3 blocks over. He killed the engine and sat there for a moment, watching the wipers drag across the windshield one last time. In the back seat, his lunch cooler sat next to Chloe's forgotten soccer ball. She'd left it there yesterday, and he'd meant to bring it inside, but forgot. Story of his life lately. Always one step behind, always trying to catch up. Ryan grabbed his thermos and hard hat, pushed open the door, and stepped into the downpour. Cold water immediately soaked through his work jacket, but he'd stopped caring about being wet years ago. Construction work did that to you, made you immune to discomfort, taught you that dry and warm were luxuries, not rights. Mitchell, you're early. Tommy Chen jogged toward him from the site trailer, holding a blueprint over his head like an umbrella. Boss wants us to pour the foundation today, rain or shine. Course he does, Ryan muttered, but there was no heat in it. He liked Tommy. The kid was 23, fresh out of trade school, still had that enthusiasm that hadn't been beaten out of him by 10-hour days and aching backs. They walked together toward the skeletal frame of what would eventually be a boutique hotel. 12 stories of glass and steel, the kind of place Ryan would never stay in, never even walk into, unless he was wearing a tool belt. "Hey, you catch the game last night?" Tommy asked. "Fell asleep on the couch before halftime. Chloe had a nightmare around 9, and after I got her settled, I was done." Tommy's face softened, the way everyone's did when Ryan mentioned his daughter. Single dad raising an 8-year-old alone, it was written all over him like a badge he never asked for. The wedding ring he still wore on a chain around his neck. The permanent exhaustion etched into the lines around his eyes. The way he talked about Chloe, like she was the only thing tethering him to the earth. "How's the little munchkin doing?" "Good. Great, actually. She made honor roll again, and her soccer team might make playoffs." Pride crept into Ryan's voice despite the exhaustion. "She's tougher than I ever was." "She gets that from you, man." Ryan didn't respond to that. He never knew what to say when people called him tough or strong or brave. He was just doing what had to be done. What choice did he have? They worked through the morning, pouring concrete in the rain, the machinery roaring so loud that conversation became impossible. Ryan fell into the rhythm of it. Lift, pour, smooth repeat. His muscles burned, his boots filled with water, and his mind went blissfully blank. This was the best part of the job, the hours when thinking stopped and only movement remained. At 11:30, Tommy tapped his shoulder and pointed toward the street. Ryan looked up, squinting through the rain. A black Mercedes sedan sat parked across the street, engine running, windows tinted so dark he couldn't see inside. Something about it felt wrong, too clean, too expensive for this neighborhood, too still. "That car's been there since 9, Tommy said. "You think it's a city inspector?" "Inspectors drive Fords," Ryan replied. "That's someone else." The Mercedes didn't move, just sat there, idling exhaust curling up into the gray morning. Ryan felt an itch between his shoulder blades, that old instinct from his military days that told him when he was being watched. He turned back to his work, but the feeling didn't fade. 3 hours later, during his lunch break, Ryan sat in his truck with the heater blasting and a soggy sandwich from the corner deli. He'd parked facing the street, and sure enough, the Mercedes was still there. His phone buzzed. A text from Chloe's school reminder parent-teacher conferences. Thursday, 4 p.m. Looking forward to discussing Chloe's progress. Ryan checked his watch. Thursday he was scheduled until 6. He'd have to ask for time off, which meant Jimmy the foreman glaring at him, which meant working through lunch the rest of the week to make up the hours. He typed back, "We'll be there. Thank you." Another buzz. This one from his sister Karen, 3 states away in Montana. "Hey, little brother. Chloe's birthday is coming up. What does she want? I'm thinking of flying out to visit." Ryan's chest tightened. Karen had been trying to help more since Sarah died, but visits were complicated. Chloe loved her aunt, but every time Karen left, the little girl cried for hours, confused about why everyone eventually went away. "She's into soccer right now. Anything soccer." "And you don't have to fly out, Karen. We're okay." "I want to fly out, dummy. You're not doing this alone anymore." Ryan closed his eyes and leaned his head back against the seat. The thing was, he was doing it alone. Had been for 3 years, ever since the cancer took Sarah in 7 brutal months. Karen meant well, but she had her own family in Billings, a husband, 2 kids, a life that didn't include Ryan's mess. He looked up, and that's when he saw her. A woman stood next to the Mercedes, now phone pressed to her ear. Even from 50 yards away, Ryan could see the quality of her clothes: long camel coat, leather boots that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Her dark hair was pulled back, and she gestured sharply as she talked, clearly arguing with whoever was on the other end. Then she turned, and for just a second, she looked directly at his truck. Ryan froze. There was something in her face, not anger, not curiosity, but something deeper. Recognition, maybe. Or desperation. She ended her call and got back in the Mercedes. The engine revved and she pulled out into traffic, disappearing around the corner. Ryan exhaled slowly. He was being paranoid. Probably just some developer's wife killing time while her husband looked at properties. Nothing to do with him. But that itch between his shoulder blades didn't go away. By the time Ryan picked up Chloe from aftercare at 5:45, the rain had stopped, leaving Seattle slick and gleaming under the early darkness. His daughter exploded out of the community center doors like she'd been launched from a cannon backpack, bouncing ponytail flying. "Daddy!" She crashed into his legs with the full force of 52 pounds of pure energy. "Guess what? Guess what?" Ryan scooped her up, ignoring the protest from his lower back. "What, Peanut? We're doing the science fair, and I'm going to do a volcano, and Miss Carmen said I can use real baking soda, and—" She paused, studying his face with those sharp brown eyes that missed nothing. "You look tired." "I'm always tired," he said, setting her down. "Comes with being old." "You're not old. You're just 36. "Exactly. Ancient." She giggled and grabbed his hand as they walked to the truck. "Can we get pizza tonight? Please, I finished all my homework at aftercare, and I promise I'll eat vegetables tomorrow." Ryan pretended to consider this. "Well, since you finished your homework." "Yes." Chloe pumped her fist in the air. They drove to Tony's Pizza, their Tuesday ritual, and squeezed into their usual booth by the window. Chloe ordered her standard cheese pizza with extra cheese, and yes, that counted as dairy, which was basically a vegetable dad, while Ryan got a beer and tried to look like he had energy left. "So tell me about your day," he said once their food arrived. "And use complete sentences this time." Chloe launched into a breathless narrative involving her best friend Maya, a boy named Joshua, who ate glue, and a heated kickball game at recess that apparently ended in diplomatic crisis. Ryan listened, nodding at the right moments, asking questions, being present, even though his body screamed for sleep. This was what mattered. This right here. Chloe's face lit up with excitement, tomato sauce on her chin, talking a mile a minute about her small, perfect world. "Daddy?" She'd grown serious suddenly. Do you ever think about Mom? The question hit him in the chest. Every day, sweetheart. Me too. She picked at her pizza crust. I'm starting to forget her voice. Is that bad? Ryan reached across the table and took her small hand in his calloused one. No, baby. That's not bad. That's just how time works. But I'll tell you stories about her whenever you want, okay? And we've got videos. Okay. She brightened slightly. Can we watch the one from the beach tonight, where she's laughing about the seagull stealing your sandwich? Absolutely. They finished dinner, and Ryan paid with crumpled bills from his wallet, leaving a bigger tip than he could afford because the waitress, Maria, always remembered Chloe's order and snuck her extra garlic bread. Outside, the city had come alive with evening lights. They walked hand in hand to the truck, and Ryan was helping Chloe into her booster seat when he saw it again. The Mercedes, parked 3 spaces down. His blood went cold. Daddy, what's wrong? Chloe noticed his stillness. Nothing, Peanut. Just thought I saw someone I knew. He buckled her in, quickly closed her door, and walked toward the Mercedes with his heart hammering. The driver's window rolled down as he approached. The woman from earlier looked up at him, and Ryan got his first clear look at her face. Mid-30s, sharp cheekbones, expensive makeup that couldn't quite hide the shadows under her eyes. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Mr. Mitchell, she said quietly. Not a question, a statement. Who the hell are you, and why are you following me? Ryan kept his voice low but hard. I've got a kid in that truck, and if you don't give me a good answer in the next 10 seconds... My name is Samantha Brooks. She held up both hands in a peaceful gesture. I'm not here to hurt you or your daughter. I need to talk to you. Please. About what? She took a shaky breath, and Ryan saw her hands trembling on the steering wheel. About something you did 12 years ago. Something that saved my brother's life. Ryan's mouth went dry. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. Samantha reached for something on the passenger seat, a manila folder worn at the edges. She opened it and held up a photograph. Ryan stared at his own face 12 years younger, grinning at the camera in a hospital gown. He remembered that day. Remembered the nurse who'd taken the picture said he should have something to commemorate his good deed. Bone marrow donation. He'd done it on a whim after seeing a flyer at the VA hospital back when he was 24 and thought he was invincible. They'd told him he was a match for someone that he could save a life. He'd said yes without thinking twice. That was a long time ago, Ryan said carefully. Why are you... He's dying again. Samantha's voice cracked. Andrew, my brother, he's rejecting everything. The doctors say you're his only chance for a second transplant. Please, Mr. Mitchell. I've been looking for you for 3 months. You're not in the donor registry anymore. You moved 4 times. Your phone number changed. I have a daughter. Ryan cut her off, glancing back at the truck where Chloe was probably watching through the window. I can't just... I know you have responsibilities. But so does my brother. He has twin daughters, Mr. Mitchell. They're 6 years old. They're going to lose their father if you don't help. Ryan felt like the parking lot was tilting beneath his feet. The risks are minimal. Less than 1% chance of serious complications, the same as last time. Last time I was 24 and single, now I'm a single parent. If something happens to me, Chloe has no one. My sister's in Montana, my parents are gone, Sarah's family doesn't speak to me anymore. He stopped, realizing he was saying too much to a stranger. Samantha's eyes filled with tears. I understand. I do. And I wouldn't ask if there was any other option. But there isn't. She pulled out a business card. This is my number. All I'm asking is that you think about it. Meet Andrew. See what you'd be saving. Ryan took the card without looking at it. I need to get my daughter home. Of course. Samantha wiped her eyes quickly. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have followed you like this. I didn't know how else to reach you. You don't have social media, your landlord wouldn't give me information, and showing up at your job site felt invasive. As opposed to stalking me to a pizza place. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. Point taken. Ryan walked back to his truck on numb legs, got in, and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, he could see Chloe watching him with worried eyes. Who was that lady? Daddy? Just someone who needed directions. He lied and hated himself for it. They drove home in silence, Chloe sensing his mood and staying quiet for once. Their apartment was in a converted warehouse in Georgetown, 2 bedrooms, thin walls, a view of the freeway. It was all Ryan could afford, but he'd made it home. Chloe's artwork covered the fridge, her books overflowed the shelves, and the couch still bore the permanent indent of where Sarah used to curl up with her tea. Ryan went through the motions of bedtime, supervising toothbrushing, reading 2 chapters of Charlotte's Web, checking under the bed for monsters, leaving the nightlight on. Daddy, Chloe whispered as he reached the door. Yeah, Peanut. Are you in trouble? His heart broke a little. No, sweetheart. I'm not in trouble. Why? You have your worried face. The one you get when bills come. Ryan walked back and sat on the edge of her bed, brushing hair back from her forehead. Sometimes grown-ups have to make hard decisions, but I promise, everything's going to be okay. You always say that. Because it's always true. She studied him for a long moment, then threw her arms around his neck. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, Chloe Bear, more than anything in the whole world. After she fell asleep, Ryan sat at the kitchen table with Samantha's business card and a beer he didn't drink. The card was heavy stock expensive. Samantha Brooks, CEO, Brooks Development. A downtown address that screamed money. He Googled her on his phone. Pages of results. Forbes profiles charity galas, a recent article about her company's affordable housing initiative. She was the real deal. Rich, powerful, influential, and desperate enough to stalk a construction worker for 3 days. Ryan clicked on images and found a family photo from a society page. Samantha in a red dress, standing next to a thin man with her same sharp features. Andrew Brooks. The caption said it was from a cancer fundraiser 2 years ago. Andrew was smiling in the photo, but Ryan could see the illness underneath the 2 sharp cheekbones, the careful way he held himself. A man who'd been fighting for a long time. Ryan closed his phone and stared at the dark window. 12 years ago, the decision had been easy. He was young, healthy, had nothing to lose, and a life to gain. They'd told him donation was noble, heroic even. They'd made it sound simple. But now he had Chloe. Had this fragile, precious life that depended on him completely. What happened if the 1% became reality? If he went under anesthesia and never woke up? If there were complications? Infections? If his body failed? Chloe would go to Karen probably. His sister would take her love, raise her right. But Chloe had already lost her mother. Losing her father, too, would break something in her that might never heal. Ryan picked up his phone again and scrolled to Karen's number. His thumb hovered over the call button. But what would he even say? Hey sis, remember that time I donated bone marrow? Well, the guy needs more and I might die, so get ready to adopt my kid. He put the phone down. The apartment was too quiet. He could hear the couple upstairs arguing, the hum of the refrigerator, his own breathing. In his mind, he saw Chloe's face when she asked about Sarah. That look of loss that no child should have to carry. He saw Andrew Brooks's twins, who were even younger than Chloe. He saw Samantha in that parking lot, hands shaking, tears in her eyes, willing to debase herself by begging a stranger. Ryan had been that stranger once, the one who needed saving. After Sarah died, he'd fallen into a dark place. Drinking too much, sleeping too little, barely holding it together. It was Tommy who'd noticed, who'd sat with him one night and just listened. It was Maria at the pizza place who'd slipped him free meals when she knew money was tight. It was Chloe's teacher who'd stayed late to tutor her when Ryan couldn't help with math homework. Strangers who became angels. He looked at Samantha's card again. The right thing to do was obvious. The right thing was always obvious. It was the brave thing that was hard. Ryan stood, walked to Chloe's room and watched her sleep. She'd kicked off her blankets like always, and he pulled them back up, tucking them around her small body. She murmured something in her sleep, something that sounded like "Daddy," and his eyes burned. "I'll keep you safe," he whispered. "No matter what, I promise." But even as he said it, he wasn't sure if he was making a promise or breaking one. Back in the kitchen, he picked up his phone one more time, opened a new message to the number on Samantha's card. His fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long moment. Then he typed, "I'll meet him, but I'm not promising anything." He hit send before he could change his mind. The response came back in less than 30 seconds. "Thank you. Thank you so much. When can you come?" Ryan looked at his calendar. Thursday he had the parent-teacher conference. Friday was payday and he needed to deposit his check. Saturday, Chloe had soccer. Sunday afternoon he typed, 2 p.m. Send me the address. Another quick response, "I'll send a car for you." "No, I'll drive myself." A pause then. "Of course. The address is 2847 Laurelhurst Drive. And Mr. Mitchell, I know what I'm asking of you. I know it's not fair. I just want you to know that I understand." Ryan didn't respond to that. He set his phone down, finished his now warm beer in one long swallow, and sat in the dark kitchen until his eyes adjusted and the shapes of his life came into focus. The photos on the fridge, Chloe's gap-toothed smile, Sarah's face from happier times, the stack of bills on the counter, the ones he was slowly chipping away at, the work boots by the door caked in dried mud. This was his life. Small, simple, hard one. And in 3 days, he was going to drive to some mansion in Laurelhurst and meet a dying man who wanted him to risk it all. Ryan closed his eyes and tried to pray, but he'd forgotten how years ago. So instead, he just sat there in the silence, hoping that somewhere in the universe, someone was listening. Hoping he wasn't about to make the biggest mistake of his life. Hoping that doing the right thing wouldn't cost him everything. Outside the city hummed on, indifferent to the weight of one man's choice. The rain started again, soft against the windows, and Ryan Mitchell sat alone in his kitchen, knowing that by Sunday, nothing would ever be the same again. The 3 days between that text message and Sunday afternoon stretched like taffy, each hour longer than the last. Ryan went through the motions, work, dinner, bedtime, but his mind stayed stuck on that address in Laurelhurst, on what waited for him there. Thursday's parent-teacher conference should have been a bright spot. Chloe's teacher, Mrs. Patterson, spent 20 minutes praising his daughter's reading comprehension, her kindness toward struggling classmates, her creativity during art projects. Ryan nodded and smiled and said all the right things, but inside he was somewhere else, entirely calculating risks and odds, like a man standing at the edge of a cliff. "Mr. Mitchell." Mrs. Patterson's voice pulled him back. "I asked if everything was all right at home. Chloe mentioned you've seemed distracted lately." Ryan's chest tightened. Of course Chloe had noticed. She noticed everything. "Just work stuff," he said, forcing his voice to sound light. "Big project coming up?" Mrs. Patterson studied him with the same sharp eyes she probably used to catch kids cheating on tests. "Well, whatever it is, don't let it consume you. That little girl worships the ground you walk on." "I know," Ryan said quietly. "Believe me, I know." That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, watching car headlights sweep across the walls, playing out scenarios in his head. Best case, the procedure went smoothly. Andrew recovered. Ryan went back to his life with a clear conscience and maybe a good story. Worst case, something went wrong, and Chloe ended up parentless before 4th grade. The statistics didn't help. He'd researched bone marrow donation until his eyes burned reading medical journals he barely understood. Less than 1% serious complication rate. Sounded good on paper. But 1% of what? How many donors were there? And did those statistics account for construction workers who spent 10 hours a day on their feet, who probably had slightly elevated blood pressure, who hadn't seen a doctor for anything beyond urgent care in 2 years? Around 3 a.m., Ryan gave up on sleep and padded to the kitchen. He made coffee and stood at the window, watching the city breathe in the darkness. Somewhere out there, Andrew Brooks was lying in a hospital bed, his body rejecting the bone marrow that had saved him once before. Somewhere out there, two 6-year-old girls were trying to understand why Daddy kept getting sicker. Ryan thought about Sarah's last months. The way cancer had eaten her from the inside out, the way she'd fought so hard to stay alive for Chloe's 5th birthday. She'd made it barely. They'd had a party in her hospital room and Sarah had smiled through the pain singing "Happy Birthday" in a voice that was mostly breath. 2 months later, she was gone. Ryan knew what it looked like when someone was dying. Knew the particular desperation of loving someone you couldn't save. He pulled out his phone and looked at Samantha's last message, the address in Laurelhurst. He Googled it, switched to satellite view. The Brooks estate sat on what looked like 2 acres of waterfront property, the kind of place that had actual names instead of just street numbers. The main house alone was probably 8,000 square feet. Ryan's entire apartment could fit in their garage. He closed the browser and opened his photos instead, scrolling to the folder labeled Sarah. There she was, laughing at the beach, the seagull incident Chloe loved so much. There she was, pregnant, glowing hand on her belly. There she was holding newborn Chloe, tears streaming down her face, looking at their daughter like she'd just witnessed creation itself. "What would you do?" Ryan whispered to the image. "If you were me, what would you do?" But Sarah just smiled at him from the screen, frozen in a moment when life was simple and death was something that happened to other people. Friday dragged. Ryan nearly dropped a load of rebar because he wasn't paying attention, and Tommy had to yell at him to watch out. During lunch, he sat in his truck and stared at Samantha's business card until the numbers blurred. He could still back out. Send a text saying he'd changed his mind, that he was sorry, but he couldn't risk it. She'd be disappointed, maybe angry, but she'd understand. She'd have to understand. But then he thought about Andrew's twins, and the decision became impossible all over again. Saturday was Chloe's soccer game, and Ryan forced himself to be present to cheer and clap and pretend his stomach wasn't tied in knots. Chloe scored a goal, her first of the season, and ran to him afterward with grass stains on her knees and pure joy on her face. "Did you see, Daddy? Did you see?" "I saw, Peanut. You were amazing." She hugged him tight, and Ryan held on, maybe a second too long, breathing in the smell of her shampoo and sweat and childhood. "Can we get ice cream?" she asked, pulling back to look at him. "Absolutely." They went to the place on Capitol Hill, the one with the homemade waffle cones, and Chloe got her usual mint chocolate chip with gummy bears on top, a combination that made Ryan's teeth hurt just looking at it. They sat outside despite the October chill, and Chloe swung her legs and talked about her goal, how she'd faked left and gone right, just like he'd taught her. "Daddy." She'd grown serious the way she did before asking difficult questions. "If something happened to you, where would I go?" Ryan's spoon stopped halfway to his mouth. "What kind of question is that?" "Maya's mom is sick, and Maya told me that if her mom dies, she has to go live with her grandma in Florida. I don't have a grandma anymore." "Hey." Ryan set down his ice cream and turned to face her fully. "Nothing's going to happen to me. I'm healthy as a horse." "You're always tired." "Because I work hard. That's different from being sick." Chloe studied him with those 2 old eyes. "But if something did happen hypothetically, that's a word Mrs. Patterson taught us. Where would I go?" Ryan's throat felt tight. "You'd go to Aunt Karen in Montana. She loves you like crazy, you know that." "I know, but I'd miss you." Her voice got small. "I already miss Mom. I don't want to miss you too." Ryan pulled her close, ice cream forgotten. "You're not going to lose me, Chloe Bear. I promise. I'm going to be around for a long, long time. Long enough to embarrass you at your high school graduation and cry at your wedding and spoil your kids rotten." She giggled against his chest. "You'd cry at my wedding?" "Absolutely. Big ugly tears. It'll be mortifying." "Good, because I'm not getting married until I'm like 30. Make it 40, and we have a deal." They finished their ice cream, and Ryan tried to shake off the cold dread that had settled in his bones. It was just a question. Kids ask questions all the time. It didn't mean anything. But that night after Chloe was asleep, Ryan sat down and wrote a letter. Just in case. He addressed it to Karen, told her everything she'd need to know. Chloe's allergies, her favorite foods, the nightlight that had to stay on the way. She needed 3 bedtime stories minimum, or she'd never settle down. He wrote about Sarah's family, who they were, and why they didn't come around anymore. He wrote his bank account information, his insurance policy number, the password to his laptop. He wrote, "Take care of her. She's everything good I ever did." Then he folded the letter, put it in an envelope, and hid it in his sock drawer, beneath the winter wool he never wore. Just in case. Just in case. Sunday arrived with unseasonably warm sunshine, the kind of October day that felt like summer's last gasp. Ryan woke early, made Chloe pancakes shaped like soccer balls, and tried to act normal while his pulse hammered in his ears. "Where are you going today?" Chloe asked around a mouthful of syrup. "Just have to meet someone for work stuff. You're going to hang out with Mrs. Chen from upstairs, remember?" "Oh yeah, she said we could make cookies." "Don't eat too many or you'll spoil dinner." Chloe grinned. "I make no promises." Ryan dropped her off at their neighbor's apartment at 1 o'clock, gave her a kiss that lasted a beat too long, and walked back downstairs with his heart in his throat. He'd dressed in the closest thing he had to nice clothes, khakis without stains, a button-down shirt Sarah had bought him years ago, shoes that weren't work boots. He looked at himself in the truck's mirror and barely recognized the nervous man staring back. The drive to Laurelhurst took 25 minutes through light Sunday traffic. Ryan watched the neighborhoods change as he drove, getting progressively nicer, the houses growing larger and farther apart, until he turned onto Laurelhurst Drive and entered another world entirely. Samantha's directions led him to a gate, an actual iron gate with an intercom. Ryan pressed the button with a shaking hand. "Mr. Mitchell." Samantha's voice crackled through the speaker. "Come on up." The gate swung open, and Ryan drove up a winding driveway lined with Japanese maples. The house appeared gradually a modern masterpiece of glass and stone, perched on the hillside, with a view of Lake Washington that probably cost more than Ryan would make in 10 lifetimes. He parked his beat-up Silverado between a Tesla and what looked like a vintage Mercedes, feeling like he'd driven into the wrong movie. Samantha met him at the front door. She'd dressed down from their parking lot encounter jeans and a sweater, but still looked like she belonged in a magazine. "Thank you for coming," she said, and the exhaustion in her eyes was even worse than before. "I know this isn't easy." "Where is he?" Ryan asked, skipping the pleasantries. "Inside, but first I need to explain something." She gestured to a bench on the front porch. "Can we sit for a minute?" Ryan sat through every instinct told him to run. Samantha took a breath. "Andrew doesn't know I found you. He told me to stop looking, said he'd made peace with everything. But I couldn't. I can't let him go without trying everything." Her voice cracked. "He's my little brother. I practically raised him after our parents died. The idea of losing him. Why doesn't he know? Because he's like you. Thinks about everyone else first. He doesn't want you to feel obligated, doesn't want to put a stranger in danger for his sake." She looked at Ryan directly. "But I'm more selfish than he is, so I'm the one asking. Begging, really." Ryan stared out at the manicured lawn, the lake glittering in the distance. What exactly is wrong with him? Graft versus host disease. His body's attacking the bone marrow from the first transplant. They've tried everything, medication, radiation, another donor. Nothing's working. The doctors say a second donation from the original donor is the best chance something about matching antibodies. She twisted her hands together. He's got maybe 3 months without intervention. Maybe. And with a successful transplant, he could have years. Could watch his girls grow up, finish the children's hospital he's been trying to build live. Her eyes filled. He could live, Mr. Mitchell. Ryan closed his eyes. 3 months. The same amount of time Sarah had at the end. What are the actual risks to me? He asked. And don't give me statistics. Tell me what could really happen. Samantha didn't sugarcoat it. Anesthesia complications, though rare. Infection at the donation site. In extremely rare cases, nerve damage or prolonged pain. You'd be sore for a few days, tired for maybe a week. Most donors go back to normal life quickly. Most, not all. Not all, she admitted. Ryan stood. I want to meet him, but I'm not promising anything. That's all I ask. She led him inside through rooms that looked like they belonged in architectural magazines, past artwork that was probably worth more than Ryan's truck and apartment combined. They climbed a curved staircase to the second floor, walked down a hallway lined with family photos, Samantha and Andrew as kids, Andrew's wedding, the twins as babies. Samantha stopped at a closed door. He's having a good day today. Some days are... She didn't finish. Just please, give him a chance. She knocked softly, then opened the door. The bedroom was flooded with afternoon light from floor to ceiling windows. Andrew Brooks sat in a chair by the window, a blanket over his lap, despite the warmth. He looked up when they entered, and Ryan saw his own younger face in that photograph, except this man was hollow-eyed and gaunt, his skin the color of old paper. Andy, someone's here to see you, Samantha said gently. Andrew's gaze shifted to Ryan, and recognition flickered across his face. You found him. His voice was raspy, but held a note of wonder. Sam, I told you to stop. I know what you told me. I didn't listen. Samantha moved to her brother's side. Andrew, this is Ryan Mitchell. Andrew stared at Ryan for a long moment, and something complicated passed over his features. Gratitude, guilt, embarrassment. You didn't have to come. Your sister's very persistent, Ryan said, staying near the door, a ghost of a smile. That's the polite version. Please sit. He gestured to another chair. Unless you'd rather stand near the exit in case you need to run. Despite everything, Ryan almost laughed. He sat. Samantha excused herself, and suddenly Ryan was alone with the man whose life he'd saved once and might be asked to save again. So, Andrew said after a moment, this is awkward. Little bit. For what it's worth, I'm sorry Sam tracked you down. This isn't your problem. She said you have kids. Twins. Andrew's face transformed. Emma and Sophie, just turned 6. They're at their grandmother's right now, which is probably good. I'm not sure I want them to see me like this. Like what? Dying. Andrew said it matter-of-factly without self-pity. Let's not dance around it. My body's rejecting the transplant and the odds aren't good. Ryan studied him. Even sick, there was something strong in Andrew's bearing, something that reminded Ryan of guys he'd served with, people who'd stared down hard truths and refused to blink. Tell me about them, Ryan said. Your daughters. Andrew's eyes lit up, and for the next 20 minutes he talked. About Emma, who wanted to be a veterinarian and brought home every injured animal she found. About Sophie, who read at a 5th grade level and asked philosophical questions that made his head hurt. About their laugh, their fights, the way they'd created their own secret language that no one else understood. They're the best thing I ever did, Andrew finished. Better than any business deal, any charity project. When I'm gone, that's what I want to be remembered for, being their dad. Ryan's throat felt tight. You sound like you've already given up. I've made peace with it. There's a difference. Andrew shifted in his chair, wincing slightly. 12 years ago, you gave me a gift. I got to meet my wife because of you. Got to have those girls build a life to work that mattered. That's more than a lot of people get. But you want more. Of course I want more. I'm 36 years old. I want to teach my daughters to drive, walk them down the aisle someday, meet my grandkids. He looked directly at Ryan. But I'm not going to guilt you into risking yourself for me. Sam might try, but I won't. She said you're building a children's hospital. Andrew waved a hand dismissively. Was building. Past tense. The project stalled without me there to push it through. He paused. You have a daughter too, Sam said. Chloe. She's 8. What's she like? Ryan found himself talking about Chloe, the way Andrew had talked about his twins, the soccer goals, the honor roll, the way she asked impossible questions, and called him out when he was pretending not to be tired. He talked about Sarah's death, about the last 3 years of figuring out how to be both parents at once. Sounds like you're doing a hell of a job, Andrew said quietly. Single parenting is no joke. Neither is dying at 36. They sat in silence for a moment, two men who had nothing in common except the bone marrow connection that bound them together. Can I ask you something? Ryan said finally. Why'd you need a donor in the first place 12 years ago? Leukemia. Diagnosed at 24 right when I was supposed to take over my father's company. Thought my life was over before it started. Andrew smiled faintly. Then some guy named Ryan Mitchell showed up on the registry and saved my ass. I tried to find you afterward, wanted to say thank you, but the anonymity rules were strict back then. I didn't do it for thanks. I know. That's what made it matter. The door opened and a woman entered, petite, dark-haired, beautiful, in the way that came from years of yoga and expensive skincare. She stopped when she saw Ryan. This is my wife, Christina, Andrew said. Chris, this is Ryan. Understanding dawned on Christina's face, followed immediately by tears. She crossed the room and grabbed Ryan's hands before he could react. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for giving me my husband. Ryan felt like he was drowning. I haven't agreed to anything. But you came. That's more than we could have hoped for. She looked at Andrew with such love that Ryan had to glance away. The girls are asking about dinner. Should I tell them you'll try to come down? Give me a few more minutes? Christina nodded, squeezed Ryan's hands once more, and left. She's terrified, Andrew said after the door closed. Trying to be strong for the girls, for me, but I can see it eating her alive. The not knowing, the waiting. Ryan stood and walked to the window. The view was spectacular, the lake, the mountains beyond the city sprawling in the distance. I need to think about this. Of course. I have a daughter who's already lost one parent. If something happens to me, then don't do it. Andrew's voice was firm. Seriously. If you have any doubt, walk away. I meant what I said. I've made peace with this. Have you really? Ryan turned to face him. Or are you just saying that to make it easier for everyone else? Andrew was quiet for a long moment. Little bit of both, maybe. Your girls haven't made peace with it. No, but they're young. They'll adapt. Will they? Ryan thought about Chloe, about the way she still sometimes called for Sarah in her sleep. Or will they spend the rest of their lives with a hole where you should have been? Andrew's composure cracked just slightly. That's not fair. None of this is fair. Ryan ran a hand through his hair. Your sister following me, you being sick again, me having to choose between risking my life and letting yours end. None of it's fair. So what are you going to do? Ryan didn't answer. He couldn't, because he still didn't know. Downstairs voices drifted up, children's laughter high and pure. Andrew's face transformed. They're back, he said softly. The girls. As if on cue, thunder erupted on the stairs, two 6-year-olds racing each other, squealing about who was faster. They burst into the room like tiny hurricanes, identical except for their haircuts, and froze when they saw Ryan. Daddy, who's that? One of them asked. Andrew held out his arms, and both girls climbed into his lap, carefully mindful of his frailty, in a way that broke Ryan's heart. This is Mr. Mitchell. He's an old friend of Daddy's. Hi, they chorused, studying Ryan with curious eyes. Hi, Ryan managed. Are you here to help Daddy feel better? The other twin asked. Mommy says someone might be able to help him. Andrew met Ryan's gaze over their heads, and the pleading there was worse than anything Samantha had said. I don't know yet, sweetheart, Ryan heard himself say. The girls accepted this with the easy adaptability of children and launched into a story about their grandmother's cat. Andrew listened with his eyes closed, arms around his daughters, and Ryan watched the three of them together, this fragile, precious unit that might have so little time left. He thought about Chloe upstairs with Mrs. Chen, probably covered in cookie dough by now. He thought about the letter in his sock drawer. He thought about Sarah in her hospital bed fighting so hard to stay for one more birthday. He thought about what it meant to be a father, to love something more than your own life, to be willing to break yourself open if it meant keeping your child safe. Ryan stood. "I should go." The girls scrambled off Andrew's lap as he struggled to stand. "Ryan, I'll call you tomorrow." Ryan headed for the door, needing air, needing space, needing to not see those 6-year-old faces looking at their dying father. Samantha appeared in the hallway, hope and dread warring on her face. "Did you?" "Tomorrow," Ryan said, brushing past her. He made it to his truck before his hands started shaking. He sat in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel, staring at this palace of a house, where a man his own age was dying, and 2 little girls were about to learn that the world was cruel and unfair, and that sometimes even money couldn't save you. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen with a photo Chloe covered in flour, grinning like a maniac, holding up a tray of lopsided cookies. Ryan stared at his daughter's face until his vision blurred. He could say no. He could walk away, go home, hold Chloe tight, and never think about Andrew Brooks again. It would be the safe choice, the smart choice, the choice that prioritized the one person who mattered most. But he'd seen Andrew's face when his daughters climbed into his lap. He'd heard the girls ask if Ryan was there to help Daddy feel better. He'd watched Christina look at her husband like he was her entire world. Ryan started the engine and drove home through the lengthening shadows, no closer to a decision than when he'd arrived, but carrying the weight of those faces with him like stones in his chest. When he picked up Chloe, she was still buzzing with sugar and excitement. "We made chocolate chip and snickerdoodle, and Mrs. Chen let me eat 4 cookies. You're going to be bouncing off the walls all night." "Probably." She grabbed his hand, chattering about her day, and Ryan held on tight, memorizing the feel of her small fingers in his. That night, after dinner and bath time and the usual bedtime routine, Chloe looked up at him from her pillow and said, "You still have your worried face, Daddy." "Do I?" "Yep. Did your meeting go bad?" Ryan sat on the edge of her bed, choosing his words carefully. "Not bad, just complicated. Sometimes grown-ups have to make really hard choices." "Like what?" "Like when helping someone else might mean taking a risk yourself." Chloe considered this with her usual seriousness. "At school, they teach us to help people even when it's hard. Mrs. Patterson says that's what makes heroes." "Mrs. Patterson's never met a real problem in her life," Ryan muttered, then immediately felt guilty. "So what are you going to do about your complicated choice?" Ryan looked at his daughter, 8 years old, so smart, so good, already trying to understand a world that was too big and too hard for her small shoulders. "I honestly don't know yet, Peanut. But whatever I decide, it'll be because I want to make sure you're okay. You're my #1 priority. Always." Chloe threw her arms around his neck. "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, Chloe Bear." After she fell asleep, Ryan sat at the kitchen table with his phone in front of him. Samantha's number pulled up the cursor, blinking in an empty text box. Tomorrow, he'd told them. He'd call tomorrow. But tomorrow was already here, ticking past midnight, becoming Monday, and Ryan still didn't have an answer. He thought about the life he'd built from the ashes of Sarah's death, small, simple, safe. He thought about the life Andrew was trying to cling to, big, complicated, slipping away. And he thought about what Sarah would have said if she were here sitting across from him at this table, drinking her peppermint tea and looking at him with those eyes that always saw right through his bullshit. She would have told him he already knew what he was going to do. She would have told him he'd known from the moment Samantha showed him that photograph in the parking lot. She would have told him that fear and love weren't opposites. They were partners, and sometimes the bravest thing you could do was admit you were terrified and do it anyway. Ryan picked up his phone and his thumb hovered over the keyboard. One word. That's all it would take. Yes or no. Save a life or save yourself. Outside, the city hummed on, indifferent to his torment. Inside, his daughter slept peacefully, trusting that tomorrow her father would still be there, would still be safe, would still be hers. Ryan closed his eyes, took a breath, and made his choice. The text he sent was simple. I'll do it, but we need to talk about conditions. Samantha's response came within seconds, like she'd been holding her phone waiting. Anything. Name it. Ryan stared at the screen, then typed out his terms. The medical appointments had to work around his construction schedule because he couldn't afford to lose days of pay. Chloe couldn't know the full truth until everything was certain he wouldn't put that fear in her head unless absolutely necessary. And if anything went wrong, if the 1% became reality, Samantha had to promise that Chloe would be taken care of. Not just physically placed with Karen, but truly cared for. College fund therapy if she needed it, someone checking in to make sure she was okay. I promise, Samantha wrote back. I'll put it in writing. Whatever you need. When do we start? There's a doctor I want you to meet. Tomorrow if possible. He's the best transplant specialist on the West Coast. Ryan looked at his work schedule. He'd have to take a long lunch, make up the hours later. Noon. Send me the address. He set the phone down and sat in the quiet kitchen, waiting to feel something, relief maybe, or pride at doing the right thing. Instead, he just felt tired and scared, and like he'd stepped onto a path that only went one direction. Sleep didn't come easy that night. Ryan lay in bed watching shadows move across the ceiling, thinking about anesthesia and infection rates, and what Chloe's face would look like if he never came home from the hospital. Around 4 a.m., he finally drifted off, only to dream about Sarah calling his name from somewhere he couldn't reach. Morning came too fast. Ryan got Chloe ready for school on autopilot, made her lunch, drove her to drop off. She kissed his cheek and ran toward the building, backpack bouncing, completely unaware that her father had just agreed to let doctors put him under and drill into his hip bone for a stranger's sake. The construction site felt different somehow, like Ryan was watching his own life from outside his body. He mixed concrete and hauled lumber and tried to focus, but his mind kept drifting to that appointment at noon. Tommy noticed. You okay, man? You've been weird all morning. Just tired. You're always tired. This is different. Tommy studied him. You sick or something? No. Just got some medical stuff to deal with. Nothing serious. Tommy didn't look convinced, but he let it drop. At 11:45, Ryan cleaned up as best he could, told the foreman he had a doctor's appointment, and drove to the address Samantha had sent. The medical building was in First Hill, all glass and steel, the kind of place where even the waiting room probably cost more than Ryan's truck. Samantha met him in the lobby, looking more put together than she had yesterday, but still carrying that bone-deep exhaustion in her eyes. Thank you for coming. Dr. Patel's expecting us. They rode the elevator to the 7th floor in silence. Ryan watched the numbers climb and tried to control his breathing. This was just a consultation, just information. He could still back out if he needed to. Dr. Patel turned out to be a thin Indian man in his 50s, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. His office was full of diplomas and awards, but also photos of patient survivors. Ryan assumed people who'd beaten the odds. Mr. Mitchell, please sit. Dr. Patel gestured to a leather chair. Ms. Brooks has told me about your previous donation. That was a remarkable thing you did. It was a long time ago. Yes, well, the human body has an interesting memory. Your bone marrow and Mr. Brooks's system established compatibility once before. That gives us a significant advantage this time. He pulled up images on his computer screen, charts and graphs that meant nothing to Ryan. I won't lie to you. This is a complex situation. Andrew's body is rejecting the original transplant, and we need fresh, compatible marrow to give his immune system a reset. What are the actual risks? Ryan asked, cutting through the medical jargon. Not statistics. What could really happen to me? Dr. Patel appreciated the directness. You'll be under general anesthesia for approximately 2 hours. We'll make small incisions in your hip and use needles to extract marrow from your pelvic bone. Most donors experience soreness and fatigue for a few days, similar to a bad bruise. Some have pain for a week or two. In rare cases, there can be infection at the extraction site reaction to anesthesia or prolonged discomfort. How rare? Less than half of 1% for serious complications. But I won't pretend the risk is zero. Nothing in medicine is zero risk. Ryan looked at Samantha, then back to the doctor. And for Andrew, what are his odds? With a second donation from you, I'd say 70% chance of full recovery. Without it, Dr. Patel's expression grew grave. He has weeks, not months. His body is shutting down. The room felt too small suddenly. Ryan stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city spread below. Somewhere down there, Chloe was in third-grade math class learning multiplication tables. Somewhere down there, Emma and Sophie Brooks were in first grade learning to read, unaware their father was dying. When would this happen? Ryan asked without turning around. We'd need to run preliminary tests this week to confirm compatibility. If everything looks good, we could schedule the procedure for early next week. Time is crucial. Next week? Ryan's voice came out sharper than he meant. That's fast. Andrew doesn't have the luxury of time, Mr. Mitchell. Ryan turned around. I have a daughter. I need to arrange things, make sure she's covered if something goes wrong. Of course. Dr. Patel's voice softened. We can schedule around your needs as much as possible. But I have to emphasize, every day we wait, Andrew's condition deteriorates. Samantha had been silent until now, but she spoke up, her voice shaking. Ryan, I know this is asking everything of you. I know it's not fair, but please. Ryan closed his eyes. What tests do you need? Relief flooded Samantha's face. Just blood work to start. We can do it right now if you have time. 45 minutes later, Ryan sat in a clinic room while a nurse drew what felt like a dozen vials of blood. She made small talk, asked about his work, whether he had kids, what his hobbies were. Ryan answered mechanically, watching his blood flow into tube after tube, dark red proof that he was healthy and alive, and about to gamble that away. All done, the nurse said cheerfully, pressing gauze to his arm. Results should be ready in 2 days. 2 days until he'd know for certain if this was really happening. Ryan drove back to the construction site with a cotton ball taped to his inner elbow and a growing sense of unreality. This was his life now, construction worker by day, potential lifesaver by appointment, father every moment in between. That evening, he picked up Chloe from aftercare and took her to the park, needing to see her run and play and be 8 years old, without the weight of adult problems crushing her small shoulders. She climbed the jungle gym while Ryan sat on a bench watching her and trying to memorize every detail. The way her ponytail swung when she jumped, the gap in her front teeth when she smiled, the fierce concentration on her face as she crossed the monkey bars. "Daddy, watch this," she called, hanging upside down from her knees. "I'm watching, be careful." She laughed, fearless, trusting that the world would catch her if she fell. Ryan's phone buzzed, a text from Karen. "How are you doing, little brother?" He stared at it for a long moment, then typed, "Can I call you later?" After Chloe's in bed. "Of course. Everything okay?" "Yeah, just need to talk." That night after Chloe was asleep, Ryan sat on his front steps and called his sister. She answered on the first ring. "Okay, you're scaring me. What's wrong?" Ryan told her everything. The woman in the parking lot. Andrew's illness, the decision he'd made, the surgery scheduled for next week. Karen listened without interrupting, which was unusual for her. When he finished, there was a long silence. "Karen, I'm here, just processing." Another pause. "You're really going to do this?" "Already gave blood for the tests. If I'm a match, yeah, I'm doing it. Ryan, what if something goes wrong? That's why I'm calling. I need to know that if something happens to me, you'll take Chloe. Really take her. Not just as an obligation, but don't. Karen's voice cracked. Don't talk like that. You're going to be fine. Probably. But I need to hear you say it anyway. Of course I'll take her. She's my niece. I love her like she's mine. Karen took a shaky breath. But you're going to come through this fine, and then I'm going to fly out there and kick your ass for making me think about a world without you in it. Despite everything, Ryan smiled. Deal. Does Chloe know? Not yet. I don't want to scare her unless I have to. She's going to find out eventually. Kids aren't stupid. I know. I just want to protect her as long as possible. You can't protect her from everything, Ryan. Sometimes you have to trust that she's strong enough to handle the truth. After they hung up, Ryan sat in the dark and thought about Sarah again. How she'd wanted to shield Chloe from her illness until the very end, but the little girl had known anyway. Kids always knew. Wednesday morning brought rain again. Seattle returning to its natural state. Ryan worked through the downpour, grateful for the physical labor that kept his mind occupied. Around 2 p.m., his phone rang. Samantha. The results are in, she said without preamble. You're a perfect match. Even better than last time, Dr. Patel says. Ryan's grip tightened on his phone. Okay. He wants to schedule the procedure for Monday. I know that's soon, but... Monday. Ryan's mind raced. That's Chloe's soccer tournament. She's been looking forward to it for weeks. Silence on the other end. Then carefully. Could someone else take her? Your sister, maybe? Ryan thought about Chloe's face when she talked about that tournament, how she'd practiced her footwork every evening after dinner. I'll figure something out. But that night, when Chloe reminded him about the tournament for the 100th time, showing him the schedule and pointing out when her team played, Ryan felt something crack in his chest. It's at 9 a.m. on Monday, and if we win, we play again at 2, and Daddy, you have to be there because you're my good luck charm. Ryan pulled her close. Sweetheart, I need to talk to you about Monday. Her face fell immediately. You have to work. Not work. Something else. Something important. He chose his words carefully. Remember how I told you about helping people, like when we volunteer at the community center? Yeah. Well, there's someone who's very sick, and the doctors think I might be able to help them get better. But it means I have to go to the hospital on Monday. Chloe's eyes went wide. Are you sick? No, baby. I'm healthy. But this person needs something from me to get well. Like a kidney Maya's uncle gave someone a kidney. Something like that. It's called bone marrow, and it's inside your bones, and doctors can take a little bit from me and give it to someone else to help them heal. Chloe processed this with her characteristic seriousness. Will it hurt? A little. I'll be sore for a few days. But you'll be okay. Ryan met her eyes. I'll be okay. She was quiet for a moment, and Ryan could see her working through the implications. You're going to miss my tournament. I know, Peanut. I'm so sorry, but Aunt Karen's going to fly in to watch you play, and she'll record everything so I can see it later. It's not the same. Her voice was small, and tears welled up in her eyes. I know it's not, and if there was any way I could do both, I would. But this person is really sick, and waiting even a few more days could... He stopped himself. Too much. She was 8 years old. It has to be Monday, Chloe. A tear rolled down her cheek. Is it because of what I said about heroes? Ryan's heart broke. What? I said heroes help people even when it's hard. And now you have to help someone and miss my game, and it's my fault. Oh, sweetheart, no. Ryan pulled her into his lap, holding her tight. This is not your fault. Not even a little bit. You're right that helping people is important, but I would have made this choice no matter what. Do you understand? This is my decision, not yours. She cried against his chest. and Ryan let her stroking her hair and feeling like the world's worst father. He was choosing a stranger's life over his daughter's soccer game. What kind of person did that make him? The kind who'd seen Andrew's twins climb into his lap. The kind who knew what it felt like to watch someone die too young. The kind who'd regret it forever if he said no, and Andrew Brooks died knowing Ryan could have saved him. "Will you call me?" Chloe asked after her tears slowed. "After the hospital thing. So I know you're okay." "The second I wake up, I promise." "Okay." She wiped her eyes. "And you'll watch the videos?" "Every single second. I'll probably watch them 10 times. She managed a watery smile. "You better." Friday afternoon, Ryan met with Dr. Patel for pre-surgical consultations. They ran more tests, took more blood, explained the procedure in detail that made Ryan's stomach turn. He signed forms that acknowledged the risks: infection, bleeding, adverse reaction to anesthesia, death. That last word looked stark on the white paper, real in a way it hadn't been before. "Do you have any questions?" Dr. Patel asked. Ryan had 1,000 questions, but none that the doctor could really answer. "How long until I can pick up my daughter again? She's 50 pounds. Give it a week to be safe. No heavy lifting immediately after. And work. You should be able to return to light duty within a week, full duty within 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how you feel." Light duty. Ryan almost laughed. There was no light duty in construction. Right. Saturday was Chloe's last practice before the tournament. Ryan stood on the sidelines watching her run drills, and she kept glancing over at him like she was afraid he'd disappear. After practice, her coach pulled Ryan aside. "Chloe mentioned you can't make the tournament. Family emergency." "Something like that." "Well, tell her to play her heart out anyway. She's one of our strongest players." Ryan felt pride and guilt war in his chest. "I will." That night, Karen called to confirm her flight details. She was arriving Sunday evening, would stay at Ryan's apartment, and would take Chloe to the tournament Monday morning. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "Terrified." "That's probably healthy. Keeps you sharp." She paused. "For what it's worth, I think you're doing a brave thing. A stupid, terrifying, impossibly brave thing. Or a selfish thing. I'm making Chloe deal with this because I can't say no to a stranger." "You're making Chloe deal with you being a good person. There are worse things." Karen's voice softened. "She's going to be proud of you, Ryan. Maybe not on Monday when she's missing you at her game, but someday. She's going to understand what you did and why." "I hope so." Sunday arrived with crisp fall weather, the kind of October day that made Seattle shine. Ryan took Chloe to the zoo, just the two of them, and they spent hours looking at animals and eating overpriced ice cream, and not talking about Monday. For a few precious hours, they were just a dad and his daughter having a normal weekend. On the drive home, Chloe said quietly, "I've been thinking about the person you're helping." "Yeah." "Do they have kids?" Ryan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "They do. 2 little girls younger than you." "Then you have to help them, because those girls need their dad." She looked out the window. "I'd be sad if anything happened to you, but I'd be sadder if those girls lost their dad when you could have saved him." Ryan had to pull over because his vision blurred with tears. He parked on a random side street and just sat there, overwhelmed by the impossible wisdom of an 8-year-old who'd already lost too much. "When did you get so smart?" he managed. "I've always been smart. You just don't always notice because you're busy being grown up and worried." He laughed through the tears and reached over to ruffle her hair. "Come here, you." She unbuckled and climbed into his lap, awkward in the small truck cab, but neither of them cared. They sat there holding each other while the city moved around them. Father and daughter, scared and brave, and doing their best. Karen arrived at 6 that evening, bursting through the door with suitcases and energy and the kind of forced cheerfulness that meant she was terrified but trying to hide it. She swept Chloe into a hug and immediately started talking about the tournament, about how they were going to win every game, about the special good luck charm she'd brought. Later, after Chloe was in bed, Karen and Ryan sat at the kitchen table with beers they weren't drinking. "You sure about this?" Karen asked. "Too late to back out now." "That's not what I asked." Ryan was quiet for a moment. "I saw his daughters. They're 6 years old, Karen, twins, and their dad is dying and I can stop it. How do I live with myself if I say no? How does Chloe live with herself if something happens to you? It won't. But if it does, then you raise her to understand that sometimes doing the right thing costs something. That her dad wasn't a coward. That he tried to be the kind of person worth looking up to." Karen's eyes filled with tears. "You're already that person, you idiot. You have been since the day Sarah died, and you kept going for Chloe's sake." "I'm not so sure about that." "Well, I am." She reached across the table and gripped his hand. "And tomorrow I'm going to make sure Chloe has the best tournament day ever. And you're going to wake up from surgery and call us and tell us all about how it went. And then we're all going to move forward from this. Together. Okay?" "Okay." They sat in silence for a while, two siblings who'd survived their parents' death and life's curveballs, and were about to face another test neither of them wanted. "Sarah would be proud of you," Karen said finally. Ryan's throat tightened. "You think?" "I know. She always said you had the biggest heart of anyone she'd ever met. Too big for your own good sometimes." "Yeah, well, that big heart might get me killed. Or it might save a life. Again." Karen squeezed his hand. "Either way, it's who you are. And changing that would mean not being Ryan anymore." That night, Ryan couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling thinking about tomorrow. The hospital was scheduled for 6 a.m. pre-op, at 5 surgery, at 7 recovery through the afternoon. Dr. Patel said he'd be groggy, but awake by early evening, sore but stable. 70% chance Andrew would fully recover. Less than half of 1% chance Ryan would have serious complications. The numbers should have been comforting. They weren't. Around 3 a.m., Ryan gave up on sleep and walked to Chloe's room. She was sprawled across her bed, covers kicked off one arm, hanging over the side. He covered her gently and stood there watching her breathe, memorizing the curve of her cheek, the flutter of her eyelashes, the small sounds she made in her sleep. "I'm going to be okay," he whispered. "I promise I'm going to be okay." As if hearing him, Chloe stirred and mumbled, "Love you, Daddy." "Love you too, Peanut, more than anything." At 4:30, his alarm went off. Ryan showered, dressed in comfortable clothes like they'd instructed, and found Karen already awake in the kitchen making coffee. "Ready?" she asked. "No, but I'm going anyway." They stood there for a moment, brother and sister, and then Karen pulled him into a fierce hug. "You come back to us, you hear me? I didn't survive Mom and Dad dying just to lose my baby brother to a stupid heroic gesture. I'll be back. Promise." "Good. Because I'm not explaining to Chloe why her father didn't come home. That's not a conversation I ever want to have." At 5:15, Ryan kissed his sleeping daughter's forehead one more time, whispered, another promise he desperately hoped he could keep, and walked out the door into the pre-dawn darkness. The city was just waking up, delivery trucks making rounds, early commuters heading to work, the sky beginning to lighten in the east. Ryan drove to the hospital with his heart hammering and his hands steady on the wheel, a man walking toward either redemption or disaster, and not entirely sure which one waited for him in the surgical suite. He thought about Sarah, about the last time he'd been in a hospital for something this serious. He thought about Andrew's twins and their father who was running out of time. He thought about Chloe at her tournament playing her heart out while he lay unconscious on an operating table. And he thought about the choice he'd made, not because it was easy or safe or fair, but because somewhere between that first photograph in a parking lot and watching Emma and Sophie climb into their father's lap, Ryan had remembered something important. Being a hero wasn't about being fearless. It was about being terrified and doing it anyway. The hospital parking garage loomed ahead, and Ryan pulled in, parked, and sat for one more moment in the quiet of his truck. Then he grabbed his phone, sent Chloe one more text she'd see when she woke up. Good luck today, Peanut. Play hard. I love you. And walked through the sliding doors into whatever came next. The pre-op room was sterile white, and two bright fluorescent lights humming overhead like anxious insects. Ryan sat on the edge of a hospital bed in a gown that didn't quite close in the back, his work-worn hands gripping the thin mattress, while a nurse checked his vitals for the third time. Blood pressure's a little elevated, she said, not unkindly. Nervous. Wouldn't you be? She smiled. Most people are. But you're doing a wonderful thing, Mr. Mitchell. That man upstairs is very lucky to have you. Ryan didn't feel wonderful. He felt like he might throw up. Dr. Patel appeared in scrubs, his face calm and reassuring behind his surgical mask. How are we feeling? Like I made a terrible mistake. That's normal. I'd be worried if you weren't scared. He pulled up a stool and sat at eye level with Ryan. I'm going to walk you through this one more time. We're going to put you under general anesthesia. You'll be completely asleep, won't feel anything. The procedure takes about 2 hours. We'll extract marrow from your posterior iliac crest, your hip bone. Multiple small punctures, not one large incision. When you wake up, you'll be sore like someone punched you in the lower back repeatedly. But you'll be fine. Define fine. Alive. Healthy, able to go home this evening if all goes well. Sore for a few days, yes. But permanently damaged, extremely unlikely. A different nurse came in with an IV kit. I'm going to get you started on fluids on little pinch. Ryan watched the needle slide into his arm, watched his blood flash back into the chamber before the saline started flowing. This was really happening. In a few minutes, he'd be unconscious, helpless, trusting these strangers to cut into his bone and take what they needed. Is Andrew awake? Ryan asked suddenly. Dr. Patel nodded. He is. Would you like to see him before we start? Ryan surprised himself by saying yes. They wheeled him down the hallway IV pole, rattling beside the gurney through corridors that smelled like antiseptic and recycled air. Andrew's room was 2 floors up in the oncology ward, where the walls were painted soft colors that were supposed to be calming, but just made everything feel sadder. Andrew was sitting up in bed, looking even more gaunt than he had a week ago. Christina sat beside him, holding his hand, her eyes red-rimmed. When they saw Ryan being wheeled in, both of them stood. You came. Andrew said, his voice rough with emotion. Yeah, well, couldn't leave you hanging. Ryan tried for levity, but his voice shook. Andrew moved toward the gurney, pulling his own IV pole, and reached for Ryan's hand. Thank you. I know what you're risking. I know what today costs you. Your girls are at a soccer tournament, Ryan said. Mine too. They should both get to see their dads tonight. Christina pressed her hand to her mouth, tears spilling over. We'll never be able to repay this. I don't want repayment. I just want him to live. Ryan looked at Andrew. You hear me? You better live. You better watch those girls grow up and be there for every birthday and every graduation and every big moment. Don't make me do this for nothing. I promise, Andrew whispered. I promise I'll fight. The orderly started to wheel Ryan back toward the OR, but Andrew called out, Ryan, when this is over, when I'm better, you and Chloe are family now. You understand. Whatever you need, whatever she needs, we take care of our own. Ryan nodded, not trusting his voice, and then he was moving again back through the hallways toward the operating room, where his fate waited. The OR was even colder than the pre-op room, all steel surfaces and bright lights. Nurses moved around him with practiced efficiency, checking machines, preparing instruments. Someone placed a mask over his face. Count backward from 10, a voice said. 10, 9, 8. Ryan's last thought before the world went dark was of Chloe somewhere across the city, lacing up her cleats and looking for him in the crowd where he wasn't. Across Seattle, in a park with freshly painted field lines and parents setting up folding chairs, Chloe Mitchell stood with her team while her coach gave a pep talk she wasn't really hearing. Her eyes kept scanning the parking lot, looking for her dad's truck, even though she knew it wouldn't come. "You okay?" Maya whispered beside her. "Yeah. Just wish my dad was here." "Where is he?" "Hospital. Helping someone." Chloe tried to sound brave about it the way her dad would want, but her chest felt tight. Karen appeared at her side, camera in hand, wearing a soccer mom smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hey, superstar. Ready to show them what you've got?" "I guess." "Your dad texted me. He said to tell you he's thinking about you and to use that left foot trick he taught you." Karen crouched down to Chloe's level. "He also said that no matter what happens today, he's proud of you. You know that, right?" Chloe nodded, blinking hard against sudden tears. "Is he going to be okay?" "Really?" Karen hesitated for just a second too long, and Chloe felt her stomach drop. But then her aunt smiled and said, "He's going to be fine. Your dad's the toughest person I know. Now get out there and score some goals for him." The whistle blew, and Chloe ran onto the field, channeling all her worry into movement. She played harder than she'd ever played before, running until her lungs burned, fighting for every ball like it mattered more than anything in the world. Because maybe if she played well enough, worked hard enough, won big enough, the universe would keep her dad safe. By halftime, her team was up 2-1, and Chloe had scored both goals. In the recovery room, Ryan surfaced from anesthesia like he was swimming up through mud. Everything hurt in a distant, fuzzy way, and his mouth tasted like metal. A nurse's face appeared above him, blurry around the edges. "Welcome back, Mr. Mitchell. Surgery went perfectly. You did great, Andrew." The word came out slurred. "The transplant is underway right now. Dr. Patel said to tell you the marrow extraction was textbook. You're all done." Ryan tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain flared in his lower back, sharp and insistent, like someone had taken a baseball bat to his spine. "Easy there. Don't rush it. The pain meds will kick in soon." Time became elastic. Minutes or hours passed, Ryan couldn't tell. He drifted in and out of consciousness, aware of people checking his vitals, adjusting his IV. Asking him questions, he answered without remembering. At some point, Samantha appeared at his bedside, her face streaked with tears. "They're transfusing Andrew now. The marrow looked perfect. Dr. Patel says it's the best possible scenario." Her voice broke. "You saved him, Ryan. You actually saved him." "Not saved yet," Ryan mumbled. "Just gave him a chance. That's all anyone can ask for." He must have drifted off again because when he opened his eyes next, the light outside had changed. The clock on the wall said 2:15. Chloe's second game would be starting soon. "My phone," Ryan croaked to the nearest nurse. "I need my phone." She helped him find it in his belongings bag, and Ryan's hands shook as he unlocked it. Messages from Karen flooded the screen, each one accompanied by photos and short videos. Chloe scoring. Chloe high-fiving teammates. Chloe's face fierce with concentration. The most recent message read, "Championship game about to start. She's been asking about you every 5 minutes. What should I tell her?" Ryan's fingers felt thick and clumsy as he typed back, "Tell her I'm awake and I'm fine. Tell her to win this thing." He hit call instead of send, needing to hear her voice. Karen answered on the first ring. "Ryan." "Oh, thank God. How are you?" "Sore. But okay. Is she there?" "Warming up. Hold on." Rustling sounds. Then Karen's voice calling, "Chloe, someone wants to talk to you." The sound of running feet. Then Chloe's breathless voice. "Daddy." Just hearing her say it made Ryan's eyes burn. "Hey, Peanut. You're okay. You're really okay." "I'm really okay. A little sore, but the doctors say I'm perfect." "How's the tournament?" "We won the first 2 games. I scored 3 goals total, and now we're in the championship, and I really wish you were here, but Aunt Karen's been recording everything and—" She stopped abruptly. "Did you help that person? The one who was sick?" "I did. The doctors took what they needed, and now they're giving it to him. He's going to have a chance to get better." "Good." Her voice got quiet. "I was worried about you." "I know, sweetheart. But I'm tough. Remember, it takes more than a little surgery to keep your old man down." "You're not old, you're 36. Ryan laughed, and even that hurt. "Right. Ancient. Now listen. You've got a championship to win. I want you to get out there and play like I'm watching because I am okay. Aunt Karen's going to send me videos the whole time." "I'm going to win this for you, Daddy." "Win it for yourself, Chloe. I'm already proud of you." After they hung up, Ryan lay back against the pillows and let himself feel everything. The pain in his back, the exhaustion in his bones, the relief that he'd woken up at all. The ache of missing Chloe's big moment. It all swirled together until he couldn't separate one feeling from another. Dr. Patel came by an hour later, checking Ryan's incisions and vital signs with satisfied efficiency. "You're healing beautifully. If you can walk to the bathroom and back without assistance, I'll discharge you this evening." It took Ryan 3 tries and assistance from 2 nurses, but he made it. Every step felt like someone was grinding glass into his pelvis, but he made it. At 6 p.m., they wheeled him out to the pickup area where Karen sat waiting in his truck, having gotten a ride from one of the other soccer parents earlier. Chloe bounced in the back seat, still in her uniform, a gold medal around her neck. The moment Ryan opened the door, she launched herself at him, and he caught her, despite the explosion of pain it caused holding her tight and breathing in the smell of grass and sweat and victory. "We won, Daddy, we won. I scored the final goal in overtime and everyone went crazy and the coach said I was player of the game and—" She pulled back suddenly, eyes wide. "Am I hurting you?" "A little," Ryan admitted, "but I don't care. Tell me everything." During the drive home, Chloe narrated the entire tournament in breathless detail, while Karen drove carefully over every bump and pothole. Ryan listened, holding his daughter's hand, feeling like maybe he'd made the right choice after all. He'd missed being there in person, but he was here now, alive, whole, able to hear about it and share her joy. The apartment stairs nearly killed him. Ryan had to stop twice, breathing through the pain, while Karen hovered, and Chloe watched with worried eyes. "I'm okay," he kept saying. "Just slow." They got him settled on the couch with pillows propping him up, pain medication in his system, and ice packs on his lower back. Chloe curled up beside him, carefully avoiding his sore spots, and they watched the tournament videos together on Karen's phone. "There," Chloe pointed. "That's when I faked right and went left just like you taught me. That was beautiful, Peanut. Perfect form." Around 8 p.m., while Chloe was in the shower, Ryan's phone rang. Samantha. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," she said. "No, it's fine. How's Andrew?" "Resting. The transplant went smoothly. They've got him on immunosuppressants to prevent rejection, but Dr. Patel is cautiously optimistic." Her voice wavered. "Ryan, I don't have words big enough for what you did today." "How I feel is words enough. Just tell me when I can check on him." "He asked if you'd come visit when you're feeling up to it. The girls have been asking about the man who helped Daddy." Ryan thought about those stares, about how every movement felt like punishment. "Give me a few days to heal up. But yeah, I'll come." The next week passed in a blur of pain medication and slow healing. Ryan couldn't go back to work yet. Couldn't lift Chloe. Couldn't do much beyond shuffle around the apartment and try not to sneeze because even that hurt. Karen stayed the full week, helping with Chloe's school routine and meals and everything Ryan normally handled alone. "I can stay longer if you need," she offered on Friday morning. "You've already done so much. I can manage from here." "You can barely walk." "I'm getting better every day, and you have your own family waiting in Montana." Karen studied him. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. Thank you for being here. For everything." She hugged him carefully. "That's what family does. And speaking of family, are you going to see Andrew?" "Tomorrow. Samantha said he's asking for me." Saturday afternoon, Ryan drove to the hospital for the first time since his surgery. Every bump in the road reminded him of what he'd done, but the pain was more manageable, now dulled to a persistent ache instead of sharp agony. Andrew's room was different from before, filled with flowers and balloons, sunshine streaming through the windows, signs of life instead of slow death. Andrew himself looked better too, with color in his cheeks and strength in his movements as he sat up to greet Ryan. "You came," he said, smiling. "Said I would." Ryan lowered himself carefully into a chair. "How are you feeling?" "Like I've been hit by a truck, but alive, thanks to you." Andrew's eyes were bright. "The markers are good, Ryan. My body's accepting the marrow." "Doctor, Patel says I might be able to go home next week if this continues." "That's great. That's really great." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, two men bound together by blood and bone, and an act of impossible generosity. "I heard Chloe's team won their tournament," Andrew said finally. "They did. She scored the winning goal." "I'm sorry you missed it." Ryan shrugged, then winced at the movement. "I watched the videos about 50 times, and I'll be at the next one. That's what matters." The door opened, and Christina entered with Emma and Sophie, both girls carrying drawings they'd made. They stopped when they saw Ryan suddenly shy. "Girls, this is Mr. Mitchell," Andrew said gently. "Remember I told you about the nice man who helped Daddy get better?" Emma, the bolder of the two, stepped forward. "Thank you for saving our daddy." Ryan's throat tightened. "You're welcome, sweetheart." "We made you pictures," Sophie added, thrusting her drawing at him. It showed stick figures labeled Mr. Mitchell and Daddy, with a big red heart between them. "This is beautiful," Ryan managed. "Thank you." The girls climbed onto Andrew's bed, careful of his IV lines, and started telling him about their week at school. Ryan watched them together, father and daughters alive together, getting a second chance, and knew with absolute certainty that every moment of pain had been worth it. Christina walked him out when he left an hour later. At the elevator, she stopped him with a hand on his arm. "I know Andrew's thanked you, and Samantha's thanked you, but I need to say it too. You gave my daughters their father back. You gave me my husband. There's no way to repay that." "You don't need to repay it. Just be happy. Live well. That's enough." The elevator doors opened, and Ryan stepped inside. As they closed, he saw Christina still standing there, tears streaming down her face, mouthing, "Thank you." One more time. Ryan returned to work 2 weeks after the surgery, starting with half days and light duty until his body fully healed. His co-workers asked questions, and he gave vague answers about a medical procedure helping someone out, nothing major. Only Tommy knew the full story, and he kept quiet about it, just clapping Ryan on the shoulder and saying, "Glad you're okay, man." Life settled back into its familiar rhythm: construction sites and school pickups, dinner and homework, bedtime stories and weekend soccer games. On the surface, everything looked the same as before. But something fundamental had shifted. Ryan felt it in quiet moments, when he watched Chloe sleep or stood under the shower, letting hot water ease his still healing back. He'd stared down his biggest fear and survived. He'd chosen to risk everything and hadn't lost anything that mattered. 3 weeks after the surgery, Samantha called. "Andrew's being discharged tomorrow. We're having a small celebration at the house this weekend, just family. We'd love it if you and Chloe could come." Ryan hesitated. The Brooks world of wealth and privilege still felt foreign to him, and showing up to their mansion with his 8-year-old daughter felt like crossing a line he wasn't sure should be crossed. "Ryan." Samantha's voice softened. "You are family now, whether you like it or not. Please come." So that Saturday, Ryan and Chloe drove to Laurelhurst again, but this time, Chloe was with him, pressed against the window and staring wide-eyed at the big houses. "These people are rich," she whispered. "They are. But they're also just people. Be polite, be yourself, and everything will be fine." The gate opened when they arrived, and Ryan parked next to cars that cost more than he'd make in 5 years. Chloe grabbed his hand as they walked to the front door, and he squeezed back, both of them nervous. Samantha answered the door in jeans and a sweater, looking more relaxed than Ryan had ever seen her. You made it. Come in, come in. The house was full of people. Andrew's family friends, well-wishers, celebrating his homecoming. But when Andrew saw Ryan, he immediately excused himself from the conversation he was having and crossed the room. You came, he said, then noticed Chloe half hiding behind Ryan. And you must be Chloe. I've heard so much about you. Hi, Chloe said shyly. Emma and Sophie are in the backyard. Do you like soccer? Her eyes lit up. I love soccer. Perfect. They've been dying to meet the girl whose dad is a hero. My dad's not a hero, Chloe said automatically, but she was smiling. He's just my dad. Andrew met Ryan's eyes over Chloe's head. That's the best kind of hero there is. Emma and Sophie appeared then, grabbing Chloe's hands and dragging her toward the backyard, where apparently a soccer net had been set up. Ryan watched his daughter go, watched her initial shyness melt away as the three girls started kicking a ball around, and felt something in his chest loosen. She'll be fine, Andrew said. Christina's out there supervising. Come on, let me show you around. They walked through the house, and Andrew introduced Ryan to what felt like 100 people, each one thanking him for saving Andrew's life, until Ryan wanted to sink into the floor from embarrassment. Eventually, they escaped to the back patio, where they could watch the girls play and talk without an audience. How are you really feeling? Ryan asked. Tired, sore, but good. Better than I've felt in months. Andrew took a careful sip of water. The doctors say I'll need regular checkups for the next year, and I have to be careful about infection, but the prognosis is good, really good. I'm glad. I've been thinking about what you did, about why you did it. Andrew paused. You didn't know me, had no obligation to me. You risked yourself for a complete stranger because it was the right thing to do. That's rare, Ryan, especially in my world where most people only help if there's something in it for them. Ryan shrugged uncomfortably. I just did what anyone would do. No. You did what most people say they'd do, but never actually follow through on. There's a difference. They watched Chloe score a goal and celebrate with Andrew's twins, all three girls laughing and tumbling onto the grass in a heap of joy. She's a good kid, Andrew observed. Best thing I ever did. You're raising her alone. Yeah. Her mom died 3 years ago. Cancer. Andrew was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry. That must have been impossibly hard. It was. Still is some days. But Chloe keeps me going. Gives me a reason to get up every morning to keep trying to be better than I was the day before. I understand that. My girls are my reason for everything. Andrew smiled. Which is why I'm grateful you gave me more time with them. However much time that ends up being. It's going to be a lot of time, Ryan said firmly. You're going to be around for a long time watching them grow up being their dad. You understand? I hope so. God, I hope so. The afternoon stretched into evening, and what was supposed to be a quick visit turned into hours of conversation and laughter, and watching the girls play together like they'd known each other forever. Christina insisted Ryan and Chloe stay for dinner, and they all crowded around a massive dining table eating pizza. Andrew's request, he said, because he'd missed normal food during his hospital stay. This is the best pizza I've ever had, Chloe announced, tomato sauce on her chin. Better than Tony's? Ryan asked. She considered this seriously. About the same, but fancier. Everyone laughed, and Chloe beamed, delighted to have made the adults happy. After dinner, while the girls watched a movie in the theater room, because of course there was a theater room, Ryan found himself alone with Samantha on the patio, looking out at the lake turned silver by moonlight. I want to set up a fund for Chloe, Samantha said without preamble. For college or whatever she needs, it's the least I can do. Ryan stiffened. That's not necessary. Maybe not, but I'm doing it anyway. You can't stop me. Samantha. Ryan. She turned to face him. You saved my brother's life. Let me do this one small thing for your daughter. Please. He wanted to argue, wanted to say they didn't need charity that he could provide for Chloe himself. But the truth was college funds were expensive and construction work didn't pay enough to save much, and Chloe deserved every opportunity in the world. "Okay," he said finally. "Thank you. Thank you for letting me help, for letting us be part of your life." She smiled. "I meant what I said before. You're family now." When Ryan and Chloe finally left around 9 p.m., Chloe was half asleep in the passenger seat clutching a stuffed animal Emma and Sophie had given her. Ryan drove home through the quiet city streets, his daughter's soft breathing beside him, and felt like maybe the world was a little bit bigger than it had been before, a little bit fuller of possibility. "Daddy?" Chloe murmured without opening her eyes. "Yeah, Peanut. I'm glad you helped Mr. Brooks. Emma and Sophie are nice." "They are. You played really well with them today. Can we see them again?" Ryan thought about the distance between their worlds. Economic, social, everything. But then he thought about Andrew's face when his daughters climbed onto his lap, about Christina's tears in the hospital, about 3 little girls playing soccer together without caring that one lived in a mansion and one in a converted warehouse apartment. "Yeah, sweetheart, I think we can." Chloe smiled without opening her eyes and drifted back to sleep, and Ryan drove home knowing that he'd done more than save a life. He'd opened a door to something new, something unexpected, something that might just change everything. The weeks that followed that first dinner blurred together in a way that made Ryan realize how drastically his life had changed. What started as awkward thank you visits became regular Sunday dinners, then spontaneous weekend gatherings, then phone calls during the week just to check in. The distance between their worlds, the one measured in dollars and square footage, seemed to shrink every time Chloe and the twins collapsed in giggles over some shared joke, every time Christina texted Ryan a photo of something that reminded her of their last conversation, every time Andrew called, just to talk about nothing in particular. 3 months after the transplant, Dr. Patel declared Andrew's recovery ahead of schedule. The new bone marrow had integrated perfectly. His blood counts were strong, and the risk of rejection was dropping by the week. Ryan was at the construction site when Andrew called with the news, and he had to step away from his crew because his eyes were burning and his throat was too tight to speak. "You did this," Andrew said, his voice thick with emotion. "You gave me my life back." "You did the hard part," Ryan managed. "All I did was show up." "That's all any of us can do, right? Just show up when it matters." 6 months in, Andrew returned to work part-time, easing back into running his company with the kind of cautious optimism of a man who'd been given a second chance and refused to waste it. But something had shifted in him. Samantha noticed it first, mentioned it to Ryan during one of their increasingly common coffee meetings, where they'd somehow become unlikely friends. "He's different now," she said, stirring sugar into her latte. "Softer maybe, more present, more, he used to work 70-hour weeks and miss the girls' bedtimes. Now he's home by 5 every day. Won't schedule meetings that conflict with their activities. Near-death experiences have a way of clarifying priorities," Ryan said. "Is that what happened to you after your wife died?" Ryan thought about those dark months after Sarah's death, the way grief had stripped everything down to the essential truth that the only thing that mattered was Chloe. "Yeah, something like that." "Well, whatever you did during that surgery, you didn't just save Andrew's body. You saved who he is as a person, as a father." Samantha met his eyes. "Our whole family owes you more than we can ever repay. You keep saying that. And I keep telling you, just be happy. That's payment enough." But the Brooks family kept finding ways to show gratitude anyway. The college fund Samantha had insisted on setting up for Chloe grew larger than Ryan wanted to think about. Andrew arranged for Ryan's construction company to bid on several of his development projects, which meant steady work and better pay. Christina started inviting Chloe to join the twins for activities, art classes, museum trips, a week at summer camp that Ryan never could have afforded on his own. At first, Ryan resisted. He didn't want charity, didn't want to be the poor relation they all felt obligated to help. But Chloe loved spending time with Emma and Sophie. And slowly Ryan began to understand that this wasn't charity, it was family. Messy, complicated, unlikely family, but family nonetheless. The first anniversary of the transplant arrived on a crisp October morning, almost exactly a year after Samantha had first followed Ryan to that construction site. Andrew threw a party calling it a celebration of life and invited everyone who'd been part of his journey. Ryan showed up with Chloe, who was now 9 and had grown 3 inches, losing the last of her little girl softness and emerging into the person she'd become. Andrew met them at the door, looking healthy and strong, barely recognizable as the gaunt man who'd sat in that hospital bed a year ago. He pulled Ryan into a hug that would have been unthinkable in their first meeting, all awkward formality and careful distance. 1 year, Andrew said. 1 year of watching my girls grow up, of being Christina's husband, of living. Because of you. Because you fought, Ryan corrected. I just gave you ammunition. The party was full of people Ryan had never met. Doctors and nurses who'd treated Andrew, friends and business associates, family members from across the country. But it was one conversation that stuck with Ryan late in the evening, when most guests had gone home and the kids were crashed in the theater room watching movies. An older man approached Ryan on the patio, extending his hand. "You're Ryan Mitchell." "That's me." "Michael Chen. I'm on the board of Seattle General Hospital with Andrew." He studied Ryan with shrewd eyes. "I heard what you did for him. Remarkable act of generosity." Ryan shrugged, uncomfortable as always with praise. "Anyone would have done it." "That's where you're wrong. Most people wouldn't. Most people would have found an excuse, rationalized their way out of it." Michael paused. "Andrew tells me you're interested in community health initiatives. I volunteer sometimes at the community center near my apartment. Help out where I can." "How would you feel about doing more? Andrew and I are planning a new clinic in South Seattle serving low-income families. We need someone who understands that community, someone who's lived it. We'd pay you, of course, as a community liaison." Ryan's first instinct was to say no. He was a construction worker, not a healthcare administrator. But then he thought about the people in his neighborhood who couldn't afford doctor visits, who waited until emergencies to seek help, who fell through the cracks of a system that wasn't designed for them. "Let me think about it," he said. Over the next few weeks, Ryan did think about it. He talked to Chloe, who thought it sounded really cool, Daddy. He talked to Karen, who said it was about time he did something that didn't destroy his body. He talked to Tommy, who told him he'd be crazy to turn down an opportunity like that. Finally, he talked to Andrew over coffee at a downtown cafe, where they'd started meeting every couple of weeks. "Why me?" Ryan asked directly. "You could hire a professional, someone with a degree in public health or social work. Why does it have to be me?" Andrew set down his coffee and looked at Ryan with that intense focus he brought to important moments. "Because you understand sacrifice. You know what it means to put someone else's needs ahead of your own comfort. That's what this clinic needs, someone who genuinely cares about the people it serves, not just someone checking boxes on a resume." "I don't have any qualifications for this." "You have the most important qualification: you give a damn. The rest we can teach you." Ryan took the job. It meant cutting back his construction hours, meant learning a whole new set of skills, meant stepping outside the comfortable routine he'd built over the past few years. But it also meant doing work that mattered, that helped people like him, that turned one act of kindness into something bigger. The clinic took 2 years to build. Ryan worked alongside Andrew and the board, learning about healthcare access and community outreach, about fundraising and volunteer coordination. He brought Chloe to planning meetings, sometimes let her see what it looked like when people worked together toward something meaningful. On a Saturday morning in early spring, Chloe, now 11 and starting to look alarmingly like Sarah, sat at the kitchen table working on a school project about heroes. "I'm supposed to interview someone I think is heroic," she said, looking up from her notes. "Can I interview you?" Ryan nearly dropped his coffee. "Me? Peanut? I'm not a hero." "That's what you always say. But I think you are." She picked up her pencil, all business. "First question. What's the bravest thing you've ever done? Ryan thought about it. Probably getting up every morning after your mom died, figuring out how to keep going when I wanted to give up. Chloe wrote that down, then looked at him seriously. What about when you donated bone marrow to Mr. Brooks? Wasn't that brave? That was different. How? Because that wasn't about being brave. That was just the right thing to do. But you were scared, weren't you? Emma told me her dad told her you were really scared before the surgery. Ryan set down his coffee and pulled out the chair next to Chloe, sitting down to face her at eye level. I was terrified. The whole week before I barely slept. I kept thinking about what would happen to you if something went wrong. But you did it anyway. Yeah. That's what brave means, Daddy. Being scared and doing it anyway. She said it with such certainty, such clarity, that Ryan felt something shift in his chest. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just don't always notice because you're busy being worried and grown up. She grinned, and Ryan saw Sarah in that smile, saw the woman his daughter was becoming. The interview continued, and Ryan found himself telling Chloe things he'd never quite articulated before. About the night he decided to donate, about meeting Andrew and the twins, about the surgery and recovery, and the moment he realized he'd made the right choice despite the fear. Do you think you'd do it again? Chloe asked. If someone else needed help. Ryan thought about it honestly. I don't know. Probably depends on the situation. But I'd like to think I'd at least try to help. Good. Because I want to be like you when I grow up. Someone who helps people even when it's hard. Ryan had to look away because his eyes were burning again. You're already like that, Chloe Bear. You've been like that since you were born. The clinic opened on a Saturday in June with a ribbon-cutting ceremony that drew local news crews and city officials. Ryan stood on the small stage between Andrew and Michael Chen, feeling completely out of place in the button-down shirt Christina had insisted he wear, watching the crowd of neighbors and community members who'd shown up to celebrate. When it was his turn to speak, Ryan kept it simple. This clinic exists because people believe that everyone deserves access to health care, regardless of their bank account. It exists because a group of strangers decided to care about their neighbors. And it's going to serve this community because we're not just providing medical care, we're providing hope. Thank you for being here. The applause was generous, but what mattered to Ryan was the faces in the crowd. Single mothers who worked 3 jobs, elderly folks on fixed incomes, families who'd been one medical emergency away from bankruptcy. This was for them. Chloe stood in the front row between Emma and Sophie, all 3 girls clapping and beaming with pride. Ryan caught her eye, and she gave him a thumbs up that made his heart swell. After the ceremony, as volunteers showed people around the new facility, Andrew pulled Ryan aside. I've been thinking about something. That's usually dangerous. Andrew smiled. I want to start a donor awareness campaign. Something that encourages people to join the bone marrow registry to consider donation. I want to use our story with your permission to show people what's possible when someone says yes. Ryan hesitated. He'd always been private, always kept his head down and avoided attention. But he thought about all the Andrews out there, all the people dying because they couldn't find a match, all the potential Ryans who might donate if they just knew it was an option. Okay, he said. But Chloe comes first. I don't want her overwhelmed by this. Of course. We'll be careful. I promise. The campaign launched 6 months later. It started small local news segments, community events, social media posts. Andrew and Ryan appeared together telling their story, explaining the process, encouraging people to register as donors. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of people joined the registry in the first month alone. By the end of the year, thousands had signed up, and there were already reports of successful matches being made. Ryan found himself recognized occasionally at the grocery store or the park, people thanking him for inspiring them to register or sharing their own transplant stories. It was strange and uncomfortable, but also deeply moving to see the ripples spreading outward from one decision made in fear and hope 3 years ago. Time continued its relentless march forward. Chloe turned 12, then 13, growing from a child into a young woman with Sarah's eyes and Ryan's stubborn determination. She volunteered at the clinic every weekend, helping with intake paperwork and entertaining kids in the waiting room. Emma and Sophie were constant fixtures in her life, the three of them as close as biological sisters. Andrew's health remained strong. Each checkup brought good news. Each anniversary marked another year of defying the odds. He and Christina had another baby, a son they named Ryan Michael Brooks. And when they asked Ryan to be the godfather, he cried openly for the first time since Sarah's funeral. On a quiet Sunday evening, 5 years after the transplant, Ryan stood on Andrew's patio, watching the sunset paint the lake in shades of orange and gold. Behind him, the house was full of noise. Chloe and the twins were teaching little Ryan how to kick a soccer ball. Christina was in the kitchen preparing dinner, and somewhere in the chaos, Samantha was probably arguing good-naturedly with her husband about something inconsequential. Andrew joined him, 2 beers in hand, passing one to Ryan without a word. They stood in comfortable silence. These 2 men who'd been strangers once, who'd been bound together by desperation and bone marrow and a choice that changed everything. "Do you ever think about it?" Andrew asked finally. "That day at the hospital." "Sometimes. Less than I used to. I think about it all the time. Not obsessively, just, it's always there in the background. The knowledge that I almost missed all of this." Andrew gestured toward the house, toward the sound of his children laughing. "Every moment I've had for the past 5 years is borrowed time, a gift I didn't earn. You earned it by fighting, by choosing to live. We both chose." Andrew looked at Ryan. "You chose to risk yourself for someone you didn't know. I chose to accept that gift and make something of it. Together we created something neither of us could have done alone." Inside, Christina called that dinner was ready. The girls came running, dragging little Ryan between them, all 4 kids talking over each other in the way of children everywhere. Chloe caught Ryan's eye through the window and waved, her face bright with happiness. "She's incredible," Andrew said, watching her. "You've done an amazing job raising her." "I've had help, more than I ever expected." "That's what family does. We help each other." They walked back inside together, and Ryan took his usual seat at the dining table that had somehow become as familiar as his own kitchen. The conversation flowed around him, talk of school and work, upcoming vacations and weekend plans, the comfortable chaos of people who loved each other and weren't afraid to show it. At one point, Chloe leaned over and whispered, "Are you okay, Daddy? You've got that thinking face." "Just happy, Peanut. Just really happy." Later that night, driving home through the quiet city streets, with Chloe drowsy in the passenger seat, Ryan reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From that parking lot, where Samantha had shown him a photograph, to the hospital bed where he'd made a terrified choice, to this moment of contentment and belonging. "Daddy," Chloe murmured, not quite asleep. "Yeah. Thank you for being brave, for helping Mr. Brooks. I know it was really hard and really scary, but I'm glad you did it." Ryan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Why are you thinking about that right now?" "I don't know, just am," she yawned. "I want to be like you when I grow up, someone who does the right thing even when they're scared." "You already are like that, Chloe. You've always been braver than me." She was asleep before they reached their apartment, and Ryan carried her upstairs the way he used to when she was small, though she was getting too big for it now. He tucked her into bed, kissed her forehead, and stood in her doorway for a moment, watching her sleep, this miraculous person who'd kept him alive through his darkest days and given him a reason to be better than he thought he could be. In the kitchen, Ryan made tea and sat at the table where he'd made so many difficult decisions over the years. The apartment was quiet, peaceful, and through the window he could see the city lights stretching toward the horizon. His phone buzzed with a text from Andrew. "Thanks for coming tonight. The kids always have more fun when Chloe's around. Same time next week." Ryan smiled and typed back, "Wouldn't miss it." Another text came through, this one from the clinic coordinator. Had 15 new patients today. Every one of them said they came because they heard about the place where people actually care. You're making a difference, Ryan. He set the phone down and sipped his tea, thinking about circles in a pond. That's what Andrew had called it once, how one act of kindness creates ripples that spread farther than you can see. Ryan had donated bone marrow 5 years ago, and from that one choice had come a saved life, a strengthened family, a community clinic, thousands of new donor registrations, and countless connections between people who might never have met otherwise. But the ripples went deeper than that. Chloe had learned what sacrifice looked like, what it meant to put others first. Emma and Sophie had their father because of Ryan's choice, and they'd grow up knowing that sometimes strangers become family, that generosity creates bonds stronger than blood. Andrew had been given time to be a father, a husband, a force for good in his community. And Ryan himself had been transformed from a man just surviving into someone actively building a life worth living. The next morning, Ryan woke to sunlight streaming through his window and the smell of pancakes burning. He stumbled into the kitchen to find Chloe at the stove, spatula in hand, surrounded by smoke. "I was trying to surprise you with breakfast," she said sheepishly. "It's not going great." Ryan laughed and took over the spatula, scraping the charred remains into the trash. "How about we make breakfast together?" They cooked side by side, Chloe cracking eggs while Ryan started a fresh batch of pancakes, falling into the easy rhythm they'd developed over years of being a team of two. The radio played quietly in the background, and through the window, Ryan could see their neighborhood coming alive, the bodega opening across the street, neighbors walking dogs, kids riding bikes. "Daddy," Chloe said as she set the table, "I've been thinking about what I want to do when I grow up." "Oh yeah, what's that?" "I want to work in healthcare, maybe be a nurse or a doctor. Something where I can help people like you helped Mr. Brooks, like we help people at the clinic." Ryan felt his chest swell with pride so fierce it almost hurt. "I think you'd be amazing at that." "Really?" "Really. You've got a good heart, Chloe. Always have. Whatever you choose to do with your life, I know it'll be something that makes the world a little bit better." She beamed at him, and in that moment, Ryan saw the full arc of everything that had happened. His choice to donate hadn't just saved Andrew's life. It had shown his daughter what compassion looked like in action, had planted seeds that would grow into her own commitment to helping others, had created a legacy that would extend far beyond his own lifetime. That afternoon, Ryan and Chloe volunteered at the clinic together, working side by side to organize medical supplies and check in patients. A young mother came in with her son, a boy about 7, who needed stitches after a playground accident. She didn't have insurance, she explained quietly, and couldn't afford the emergency room. "That's okay," Ryan told her gently. "That's why we're here. Let's get him taken care of." While the clinic doctor cleaned and stitched the wound, Ryan sat with the mother in the waiting room. She was maybe 25, working 2 jobs, raising her son alone. Her story could have been anyone's story, could have been Ryan's story, in a different life. "Thank you," she said when the doctor finished. "I was so scared about what this would cost." "No charge. That's what community means. We take care of each other." Watching her leave with her son, the boy's hand bandaged, but his smile bright, Ryan felt that familiar warmth that came from knowing he was exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was supposed to do. As the years continued to unfold, Ryan watched the world change around him. The clinic expanded to serve more neighborhoods. The donor registry campaign grew into a national movement. Andrew's children grew up alongside Chloe, all of them becoming teenagers and then young adults, their lives intertwined in ways that felt inevitable now, rather than unlikely. Chloe went to college on the scholarship fund Samantha had set up, studying pre-med, with the same fierce determination she'd brought to everything since childhood. She came home during breaks and volunteered at the clinic, and Ryan could see her future taking shape, a future built on the foundation of compassion and service he'd tried to model for her. On the 10th anniversary of the transplant, Now an annual tradition, the celebration was bigger than ever. The clinic had become a model for community healthcare across the country. Andrew's donor awareness campaign had facilitated thousands of successful transplants. And the two families, the Brooks and the Mitchells, had become so thoroughly enmeshed that it was impossible to remember a time when they'd been separate. Ryan stood once again on that familiar patio, older now grayer, but no less grateful for the path his life had taken. Andrew joined him, both men in their late 40s, now watching their children, no longer children, really talk and laugh together in the yard below. 10 years, Andrew said quietly. A decade of life I never should have had. A decade you earned by fighting for it. We've had this conversation before. We'll probably have it again. Ryan smiled. I'm stubborn that way. Andrew was quiet for a moment, then said, I've been thinking about legacy lately. What we leave behind when we're gone. And I realized something: the most important legacy isn't what you build or how much money you make. It's the lives you touch, the good you put into the world, the way you make things better for the people around you. That's pretty philosophical for a Monday. I'm serious. Look at what came from your choice 10 years ago. You saved my life, yes, but you also inspired thousands of people to join the donor registry. You helped build a clinic that served tens of thousands of patients. You showed Chloe what it means to be truly generous. You created ripples that are still spreading, touching people you'll never meet. Ryan thought about that, about the mother and son from the clinic, about the strangers who'd been matched with donors because of the awareness campaign, about all the invisible connections and consequences that flowed from one scared man saying yes in a parking lot. I just did what I thought was right, he said finally. Exactly. And that's the whole point. You did what was right, not what was easy. That's the definition of character. Inside the house, someone called for them to come for dinner. Ryan and Andrew walked back together, and as they entered, the warmth and noise of family gathered around a table, Ryan felt a peace settle over him that had taken years to find. This was what mattered. Not the money or the recognition or even the dramatic life-saving gesture, but these quiet moments of connection and love. The everyday miracle of being present for the people who needed you, of showing up even when it was hard, of choosing compassion over comfort. Later that night, after dinner and dessert, and too many stories after Chloe had driven back to school, and the Brooks kids had headed to their various apartments and dorms, Ryan sat alone in his truck in the parking lot of his apartment building. The same building where he'd lived through Sarah's death and Chloe's childhood, and his own transformation from a man barely surviving to someone actively engaged with living. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through photos from the evening: Chloe laughing with Emma and Sophie, Andrew playing with his grandchildren Samantha and Christina, deep in conversation. So many moments of joy that might never have happened if Ryan had said no all those years ago. But he hadn't said no. Despite the fear and the risk and the very real possibility of losing everything, he'd said yes, and that single word had changed more lives than he could count. Ryan's phone buzzed with a text from Chloe. Love you, Daddy. Thanks for always being my hero, even when you don't think you are. He smiled and typed back, Love you too, Peanut. Proud of the person you've become. As he climbed the familiar stairs to his apartment, Ryan thought about the construction worker he'd been 10 years ago, exhausted, grieving, just trying to get through each day. That man could never have imagined this life, these connections, this sense of purpose and belonging. Inside his apartment, Ryan made tea and sat at his kitchen table one more time, looking out at the city lights that had witnessed so much of his journey. Tomorrow, he'd go back to the clinic, would help more families, would continue the work of building community one interaction at a time. Tomorrow, Chloe would call with updates from school. Andrew would probably text about weekend plans, and life would continue its beautiful, ordinary unfolding. But tonight, Ryan sat in the quiet and let himself feel the full weight of gratitude for a choice made in fear that had led to more love than he ever thought possible. He thought about what he'd tell that scared man in the hospital 10 years ago, the one lying on the gurney wondering if he'd made a terrible mistake. He'd tell him that fear and courage weren't opposites, they were partners in every meaningful choice. He'd tell him that saying yes to helping others was the same as saying yes to living fully. He'd tell him that the risk was worth it, that the pain was temporary, but the ripples would last forever. Most of all, he'd tell him what Chloe had understood all along, that heroes weren't fearless people who did impossible things, but ordinary people who did the right thing despite being terrified, who showed up when it mattered, who chose love over safety again and again until it became the only choice that made sense. Ryan set down his empty mug and prepared for bed, but before turning out the lights, he stood at Chloe's bedroom door, even though she wasn't there anymore. The room was neat and organized, waiting for her next visit home full of memories and promise. He thought about Sarah, about how she'd be so proud of the woman their daughter was becoming, about how she'd probably say, "I told you so," about Ryan being braver than he believed. He thought about Andrew and his family, about the clinic and the donor registry, about all the ways one decision had multiplied into 1,000 small miracles. And he thought about the simple truth that had driven everything. That when you help one person, you don't just save a life. You start a chain reaction of compassion that spreads like circles in a pond, touching shores you'll never see, changing the world in ways both vast and invisible. Ryan turned out the light and climbed into bed, his body tired, but his heart full, knowing that tomorrow would bring new chances to help, to connect, to make the choice to show up for the people who needed him. Because in the end, that's all any of us could do: say yes when it mattered, be brave when it counted, and trust that our small acts of kindness would ripple outward long after we were gone, creating a world just a little bit more loving than the one we'd found. And as sleep finally claimed him, Ryan Mitchell, construction worker, single father, reluctant hero, and proof that one person saying yes could change everything, whispered the same words into the darkness that had defined his entire journey. "All I did was say yes."